Spectators have written a lot about Gorbachev's text, not only analyzing how the Soviet Union gave birth to Gorbachev, but also analyzing how Gorbachev led the Soviet Union to its disintegration. The purpose of writing Gorbachev is to learn from history, so that we can prevent the emergence of a Chinese version of Gorbachev. This topic has been discussed before, but it is always listed as a sensitive topic. Coincidentally, I found an article written by a colleague on wuxiang.com, and I was also wary of the appearance of a Chinese version of Gorbachev in the future. In fact, it is of practical and important significance to discuss this issue now. In the era of Stalin, no one could have imagined that there would be Gorbachev. In the era of Khrushchev and Brezhnev, no one could have imagined that Gorbachev would appear. So we must guard against the emergence of a Chinese version of Gorbachev in the future. 1. We must guard not only against the Chinese version of Gorbachev, but also against the Chinese version of Yakovlev. Why do you say this way? Because Yakovlev is the most destructive character. Although Gorbachev was favored by the West and was dissatisfied with the Soviet system when he was young, when he took office, he did not intend to bring down the Soviet Union, but led the Soviet Union step by step under Yakovlev's leadership to disintegrate. In the end, Gorbachev actually regretted it. After the disintegration of the Soviet Union, Gorbachev stated to the outside world that he was happy to see the disintegration of the Soviet Union, and he had been moving towards this goal since he came to power. In fact, this is just rhetoric to please the West. It was Yakovlev who really gave Gorbachev a bad idea. He was originally a cadre who was put into the cold palace by the Soviet high level and no longer reused. Yakovlev was demoted from the Soviet Union's acting minister of propaganda to Canada as an ambassador. There is a big gap, but the reason is very clear. This person has been suspected by the high-level Soviet Union and the KGB to have contacts with the United States, but there is no specific evidence. Later, as Brezhnev, Andropov and others died one after another, Yakovlev's affairs were also forgotten. But at this time Yakovlev had been manipulated by the West. Later, when Gorbachev visited Canada, Yakovlev accompanied him all the way. The two cherished each other and forged a deep friendship. After Gorbachev came to power, he transferred Yakovlev to Moscow as the Minister of Propaganda of the Soviet Union. In Gorbachev's view, Yakovlev is his brain, and the two have the same concept. He believes that Yakovlev can promote his ideas. Yakovlev became the propaganda minister in charge of Soviet ideology, and he continued to promote Gorbachev's new thinking theory. He was even more radical than Gorbachev, replacing a group of heads of the Soviet party media and replacing them with a group of people Yakovlev thought was appropriate. These people are all westernized and brainwashed people, and some are Yakovlev's cronies. After they took office, they adopted Western-style media methods, and even relaxed the restrictions on media and newspapers, and introduced Western media. This move was ruthless enough to completely make the Soviet Union rush towards Western liberalization, and the Soviet Union's ideological position was completely lost. Gorbachev didn't expect Yakovlev's approach either. But after the Soviet Union's public opinion was released, it was very difficult to accept it. Why did Yakovlev do this? It is rumored that Yakovlev has long been instigated by the CIA. In fact, his identity is an American spy. The head of the KGB of the Soviet Union has already reminded Gorbachev, but how could Gorbachev arrest Yakovlev? That would be a slap in the face of Gorbachev. But this kind of laissez-faire made the Soviet Union embark on a road of no return. 2. Judging from Yakovlev's experience, he was a hero of the Great Patriotic War at the beginning. After being injured, he transferred to a local job and was trained by the Soviet Communist Party as a reserve cadre. Because of his good writing skills, he was transferred to work in the central government of the Soviet Union all the way. In the 1960s, he was trained by the Soviet Union as a key cadre and sent to the United States to study. In fact, this kind of study abroad was sent by the Soviet Union and the United States at that time. However, most of the student cadres sent by the Soviet Union were instigated by the United States. But what the United States sent to the Soviet Union did not change. When Yakovlev was studying in the United States, his values changed and he was instigated by American intelligence organizations. Regarding the changes in Yakovlev, the Soviet intelligence agencies did not know, nor did the top Soviet officials. It was not until Yakovlev returned home that his words and deeds were suspected. After Yakovlev returned to China, he was reused as Deputy Minister of Propaganda Department of the Soviet Union, and then Acting Minister. If nothing happens to him, it is possible to remove the word generation and become a young minister. Yakovlev was too anxious. When he was the acting minister, he made violent remarks. These remarks were manipulated by the United States, but the Soviet Union soon discovered that there was a problem with this person and needed to be investigated. So he was directly suspended for investigation, but later no problems were found in the investigation, and he was sent to Canada as an ambassador. In fact, it was observation and investigation. At this time, Yakovlev was stable. Of course, it is not ruled out that the United States has ordered it to be stable, and no more accidents can occur, otherwise the spies that have been cultivated so hard will lose their effect. After years of keeping a low profile in Canada, he finally won the appreciation of Gorbachev. Now I have always suspected that Gorbachev's appreciation of Yakovlev and his subsequent transfer were manipulated by the United States. Regardless of whether Goya and Goya were tricky or not, but the appointment of an American spy as the Soviet Union's propaganda minister, and no one noticed, it can be seen that the Soviet Union had been infiltrated into a sieve by the United States at that time. 3. The United States also wants to cultivate a Chinese version of Yakovlev, subverting China in the same way as subverting the Soviet Union. Why are there many people in China who worship beauty and are pro-American, and there are even a large number of kneeling people? Every time the United States provokes us, there will be China-us friendship, no conflict, and even husband and wife theory. Even when the financial crisis broke out in the United States, some people actually made remarks such as saving the United States is saving China. Some people who worship the United States, love the United States and fear the United States, most of them have the experience of studying in the United States, and some of them have made great achievements. So we have to pass Yakovlev of the Soviet Union and arouse high vigilance. If Yakovlev similar to the Soviet Union appears, it will be extremely destructive. We should not naively think that the main target of the United States is Russia. Now the main target of the United States is China, because in the eyes of the United States, China is the biggest opponent and enemy. The United States has long laid out plans for us, and it has already begun since the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and the United States. After the opening, the relationship between China and the United States is very good, but the United States has not forgotten to infiltrate us. In the eyes of the United States, they do not want a socialist country to exist, and subversion and dismemberment are only a matter of time. After the disintegration of the Soviet Union, the United States tasted the sweetness. The Americans did not expect that their early penetration would successfully bring down the Soviet Union, so China is no problem. Now the US has applied to us what it used to deal with the Soviet Union, and it is not ruled out that those who infiltrated in the early stage will become Yakovlev-style people. Therefore, we must be more vigilant and guard against eradication. It can't be like the Soviet Union. Yakovlev became a high-ranking official, but he didn't find out that he was instigated. Therefore, we must prevent people like Yakovlev from appearing in the future. This is the focus of prevention.